Thank you for joining us on this segment of Engendered. If you're joining us, you're right on time because the show is just about to begin. And like Victoria said before the break, we have a very important topic to discuss with also a very important personality in the studio today. And it's, it's a shocking and alarming that this particular topic, it made me discover a lot of things. I was not really aware. I've just been hearing about it, but doing my research and I got to know that some people are actually victims of this particular thing. I saw pictures of, when they're talking about when you see an old lady that forgets stuff, that has dementia, the next thing you say she's a witch or something has happened to her, they start stoning them.
Normally when you see an old ragged woman, you just assume she's a witch. Mentally in Nigeria, in this setting where we are often, before I got this topic, I didn't even think there was anything as abuse on.
Exactly, I didn't pay attention to
would anyone literally abuse, would anyone want to hit an elder? So that's my thoughts on.
When it reminded me of when I was growing up, there was this set of people when we traveled to the village, and then when we see elderly people coming, my dad is like, come and greet them. Sometimes when I was small, I was scared. You're trying to greet them. They are old, they look different from you. And because of so many stories you've heard of witches and wizards in Nigeria, and then you're thinking, is this one of those African magic epic women that I see on?
Well, I'll give you an instance. Recently I traveled back home. So I was just walking past the streets. An old woman at the side, she was just doing like this, come, my sister. I ran away. Because I don't know what she was going to. I'm sorry, but I wasn't sure why she was calling me. I do not know her from anywhere, but perhaps maybe I've abused her in a way.
Exactly, and you don't know how that made her feel.
Exactly.
But I just realized that then most of my dad's aunties and uncles, I always stayed away from them because I didn't like the way, I don't know, maybe it was the orientation or the mindset that we had while growing up. I just felt like, let me stay away. But if they call me, I greet, I respect and stuff. But because of the mindset I have, I always try my best to stay away from them. So I'm sure you're confused on what we're talking about, but let me just take a brief intro of our topic of discussion today. It says, Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa. Its total population currently stands around 200 million. According to National Population Commission, that was in 2021. While its young population is more than half of the total population, the Global Age Watch Index states that the number of persons 60 years and above is increasing and is projected to increase by 2030. Protecting older persons is fraught with many challenges, but is further complicated by the economic challenges the country is going through. Over 80 million Nigerians, including over 3 million older persons, still live in extreme poverty. The rising cost of living, coupled with the consistent neglect of elder persons in developmental efforts, make addressing the issue of older persons a national emergency, which requires a coordinated approach from all relevant stakeholders. It is to this end that the federal government through the NSCC Act 2017, established the National Senior Citizen Center, NSCC, to protect the dignity of older person. And today we'll be discussing World Elder Abuse Awareness Day with the Director General of National Senior Citizen Center, Omokaro. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So good to have you join us.
You're welcome.
I really enjoyed your conversation.
Welcome to the show.
I'm between the two of you. So.
Yeah. So like we were saying earlier, we have Victoria and Chidinma were guilty one way to have discriminated against senior citizens. But now, I want you to explain to us, who do we refer to as a senior citizen, or who are those qualified to fall into the category of a senior citizen?
Well, thank you very much for having me on such an important day. And the essence is to create awareness of the issue, which is elder abuse. And now it's not just only abuse, it's violence against older persons. Older persons by a national policy on aging, which we have operationalized. It's chronologically somewhere like 60 years and above. And you know that is also the mandatory age for retirement for most public servants. So yes, 60 years and above qualified to be an older person.
Okay, so it's actually the word of the abuse day. Why do we decide on this day to create awareness?
Okay, World Elder Abuse Awareness Day is observed. Today is June 15th, annually June 15th. And it was established by the United Nations resolution. Why? Because, of course, the population of older persons is increasing, and very much so, really accelerating. It's increasing. By 2050, we'll have 2 billion older persons. And then at that time, 1 in every 5 will be an older person. 1 in every 5 person. In Nigeria right now, we have 14.8 million older persons. And it's projected that we are really going to grow. By that same 2050, we're going to have 30 million older persons. So just close your eyes and imagine. And then when you imagine the thing about aging is that it's progression. So everybody, you must be caught in the cycle. And so this day was set aside to, of course, not shy away from what is obvious. That older persons, because of their frailty and because most of them are in need, they are abused. And when you talk about abuse, you are talking about acts that are intentional. Intentional that cause harm to older people or put them at risk of harm. And not just this intentional act, but also when you fail to act, that is neglect. So neglect also is abuse. And there are many kinds of abuse. It could be physical, when you attack an older person. I mean, now people beat up older people. You talked about, when they're accused of being witches or wizards, they don't just accuse them and leave them. They accuse them and then they thoroughly mess them up because they think, because they exist, that is why some calamities are befalling, persons in the community. Then you also have verbal abuse. This is serious emotional abuse, where they verbally attack an older person, insult another person, humiliate an older person in any kind of care setting. You also have financial abuse, because some older persons now get to a stage where they are cognitively impaired, where they really cannot control or manage their finances. So they now have to be dependent on people to help them go to the bank, to help them sort out things. So people take advantage of that vulnerability. They abuse them, they steal from them, they empty their accounts. And then, of course, you have sexual abuse. Real sexual, older women are sexually abused, raped.
By who?
By the younger ones. Some of them do it, some maybe it's fetish, I don't know what it is, but older women are abused. So you have this series of abuses. And because of our cultural context and our value system, it's very easy to sit back and say, no, it can never happen in Nigeria, it can never happen in Africa. The culture, we respect our older people. But it is happening, and it is a huge problem, and it is a common problem, but it is underreported. Underreported, why? Because the older persons would not want to risk reports, because the persons who abuse them are mostly family members. This abuse happens in a situation of trust. Caregivers, family members who abuse, they slap, they kick, why sometimes maybe because of burden of care, and maybe you find an older person who is suffering from urinary incontinence, messing up, find another person who has dementia, maybe goes about and forgets where he's coming from. You find an older person who cannot, take care of daily activities of daily living. They can bathe, they cannot brush. And then you find people, enduringly taking care, and sometimes they get very burdened, and then those older persons now become victims. But the worst kind of abuse is the one that is systemic, institutional, where, responsible government that should put in place the policy, the legislation, and then, of course, the data that would bring about, the institution, the program activities, and all that will strengthen the protection of the rights of older persons. When that is not done, then you have totally abused older people.
Before we go to the protection, you said sometimes these older women are scared to even relate it or report it.
Yes.
I understand, because I've actually stayed amongst older people, especially women. They seem to be fine with everything you do. They're not quarreling with you. They are not against you. Whatever you do, it's just okay. They just find a way and just cope with it. Okay, so how would people know when an older person or an elder person suffering from or is a victim of abuse?
Okay, now, sorry, hold on your thoughts. I think we'll go on a short break now. Okay, viewers, we'll go on a short break, and when we return, she will be giving us the response to Victoria's question. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, and if you're just joining us, you're still watching Engendered, and of course we're discussing with an important guest in the house, Mrs. Omokaro. We're discussing on the World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Ma, before we went on that break, I asked a question as to how do we get to know the signs when an elderly person is abused?
Yeah, it will be through education. It will also be through what we're doing about now, creating awareness and identifying the kinds of abuse and the way, sometimes it's difficult, it's subtle, because the older person may not be saying. For instance, you can find an older person just withdrawing and who refuse to eat, who refuse to talk. Why? Because sometimes we do not believe that they have a right to be independent, or have a right to be autonomous in their decisions. I give you an example. You find some adult children who believe that they have the right to go and move their parents from the village to the city, because they think they would better care for them, they would have access to health care, and they find a situation where the parents would prefer to stay where they are, because that is where they know, that is where they're familiar to them and they feel comfortable. But forcefully, they would take them. Now you have silenced them. Yes, your intention is good, but what you have done is that you have not recognized that they have a right to engage in a discussion and to say, yes, they would want to come or they would not want to come. And so you find situations where these parents are now hauled to the city, and then they get to the city, they feel lost. Before long, they become sick. Why? Because you have suppressed their rights. And then there's something about the help-seeking behavior, where you find a man who was full of authority, a man who had his own, who had his money, who was a happening person being in charge of the house. All of a sudden, he's retired. Maybe his pensions are not coming in. And then everybody's taking decisions over his head. And then he stays there. So emotionally, that man is in torture. He's abused because nobody's consulting him anymore. Nobody recognizes that, yes, he's old, but yes, he's still valuable. He still has to have something to contribute.
Because from what you're narrating now, is that not something that has to do with their emotions at that point in time? Because, for example, if as a practical example I have, my grandfather was sick and he was in the village. My mom and her siblings kept telling him, come to the city, let's take care of you. He refused. I'm not coming. That's how he did until he died. Not because they can't get someone to take care of him there, but in the city, we have better healthcare system.
Exactly, that's exactly what I said.
Take care of him, and they can monitor him personally, one-on-one, and take care of him. But he refused and insisted until he died. At that point, you mentioned the fact that a man that's maybe waiting for pension, children always have this mindset like, my parents have done a lot for me, so it's my turn to take care of them. Just like when we were children, we literally do not have a right to say anything. And at that point, they look like, they sometimes act like children. And they feel like, I'm trying to take care of my parents at this point in time. Is that still a form of abuse?
Okay, let me ask you what you said.
I want to tell you, the intention is very good and it's commendable. But you must engage in conversation and engage respectfully. And let that decision come from the man. But I just started with these subtle ones that we do, but we don't know that it's a form of abuse. But you find the ones that physically, they slap, they beat, they kick.
Oh.
Well, because the person is frail and sick and has messed up. And then you find the financial one, where they, steal from the older person, they defraud the older person. You can recognize all that. And then, of course, you also find the outright violent one, where somebody is accused of being a witch, and you see mob attack, community mob attack. That's also abuse. So anything that takes away respect, anything that deprives the older person of dignity, anything that silences his or her voice, anything that makes him or her recoil in intimidation, as he's been intimidated, okay, and make him say, okay, there's nothing I can do here, you people are young and all. And then the one also that attacks the image, because you're old, you're ugly. Because you're old, like, don't touch me, wrinkled skin, and and then you can find a room full of people, and nobody's talking to the older person, because you feel that, no, old school, you will not understand anything. You go, yeah, no, grandma, you will not understand. Yeah, grandma, you will not understand. Nobody wants to talk to grandma. That is isolation, and it causes, it's psychologically it causes stress, because you have, cut the person off from inclusion and from participation. So there are so many things that we do that constitute abuse. But of course, it is a range of abuse, from the subtle one, that causes emotional distress and causes, loss of self-esteem and loss of dignity, and to the one that outrightly, harms, inflicts physical injury.
Okay, I would love to ask Chidinma, please, how often your office receives reports of elder abuse, and of course, which or what form of abuse is more predominant in this part of the country? Yeah,
I would want to say before I answer that the National Senior Citizen Center, of course, we have through developing a roadmap, strategy roadmap, 10 years, and developing a national plan of action, developing our programs in priority areas, one of which is this creating an age-friendly environment and enhancing capacities of older persons to continue to engage. The prevention and the intervention in older abuse comes here, where and so what we do is that we have now entered into a partnership with NAPTIP. NAPTIP, they are the ones that are operationalizing the VAP law, Violence Against Older Persons Prohibition Act, and now they have built systems and they have their response squad. And then we have also developed our stakeholders, consultative forums in every state, in every community. And so now we have, mainstreamed older persons into their own targets. And now we can deploy their call lines. So we have toll-free lines that anybody can call. You can stay here and call. If you know any other person that is abused, you can call. In fact, before I leave here, we're going to, arm you with those lines that you can play here. And once you call that line, even as remote as any community, NAPTIP, and now this VAP law has been domesticated by, I think, 34 states. So they also have their squads in those states. So that is the lifeline for older people. We have had cause to get somebody arrested. In fact, it was a daughter, an adult child, abused. Yes, well, they are still the caretakers. So we have had people, really, arrested. We have had, because we're also working with the National Human Rights Commission. We're also working with the Council for Legal Aid, the Legal Aid Council of Nigeria. That's for representation, in court, access to justice. So we have built this, this system and this partnership that we can readily respond to issues of abuse. And yes, and so the one that is most common is this accusation of witchcraft. Yeah, very common. It all happened in Benue, where a man was buried alive because there was thunder and lightning, and the thunder happened to have struck, you know, and some people died in the community. This was a 72-year-old man. They buried him alive, that he was the one that caused and brought the thunder to kill people. And there was also the case also in Enugu State. It's all about witchcraft accusation. So that is, I think, is getting very common. And then the rape as well.
You know, that rape is really alarming, because I hear of rape, but I've heard of it, well, maybe once or twice, but I did not really think that it was actually happening like the stories that I read. Yeah. Because when we talk about rape, we talk about raping the younger ones. Permit me to say this, because they find them more attractive, everything is, the breast is still standing and all of that. But I'm trying to imagine why a younger person will try and rape an elderly person.
Well, rape in itself is not somebody that is in his right mind to go and rape another person. So that same mind could do anything.
Can do anything.
Yeah, that same mind can do anything.
You've mentioned a lot of things about the elderly person. So how, I would like, because I know that is your line of duty, I would like you to advise us, how should we have these conversations, negotiate with these elderly persons? Because sometimes they seem to be difficult. Like when you try to speak with them, personally, I've seen videos of some caregivers that try and help the elderly persons, and in turn, the elderly persons are the ones abusing those caregivers. I'm not disputing that aspect that other people do, but I've seen videos like that. Sometimes you try to tell them, okay, you need to do this at this point in time. You need to be taken to the hospital at this point, and they tell you, no, I'm okay. You mentioned the aspect of they don't want to come to the city. I've heard of stories like that, where a woman said she didn't want to come to the city for Omugo when her daughter put to bed, and they forced her to come. She came, she fell sick, she got home, she died, and stuff like that. So how do we now try and negotiate and have an understanding? Sometimes they are right, sometimes they are wrong. Because
most times they are wrong.
Because at that point in time,
you see, especially when it comes to their health, they seem to just like be negligent. Okay, like let me just die. Or
sometimes they tell you it's my time already. Let me just go, and you're like, mommy or daddy or mama, papa, grandpa, grandma, it's not yet your time. We can still do something about it. They're like, stop wasting. My grandfather told us, stop wasting your money on me. Stop wasting your money on drugs. Just leave me. When is my time, I will go and meet my Lord. And things like that. So how do we negotiate with them?
What the National Senior Citizen Center is doing now, we're doing many things in many priority areas. But the one that concerns health and social care is the one that is going to really take care of the situation that we are talking about. You know that there's a continuum of independence and then dependency. So along this continuum, you have some older people, they go about, do their thing, bet themselves, and they're still engaging and feeling good, even at 70, 80. And then along this continuum, you also have some older persons who come in and out of, they need care, they get well, they are okay. And then on this extreme, you have older people that totally need 24/7 care. Especially those ones with cognitive impairment. And what is common among all this is that at some point they really need care, whether it is home help, the basic care that you're talking about now, where informal caregivers like you can care, and then also, or whether they should now think about other facilities where it is available. So what the National Senior Citizen Center has done is that now we have recognized that people need to be trained. They need to develop the skills and the competencies to understand care settings, to understand the peculiarities of older people. Because as you say, with our age and with all the experiences, and this thing is psychological. I have been independent. I have managed myself. I took care of you. I sent you to school. I used to be the one to give you the orders. Now it's reversed. And because it's reversed, it's not easy on this person who was on the other seat at that time. And so it is very, very important, your tone and the way you approach and the frequency, the way you try to force. Okay, they want to eat. They don't want, and you stand this, you must eat. Well, what is it? Look at this child. You want to force me to eat. So it takes for you to understand the dynamics, the social psychology of it. So that is why we have just finished developing a benchmark and minimum standard in curriculum to train caregivers, even informal caregivers. And because it is the National Board of Technical Education that has this statutory mandate for technical education, we have partnered with them and partnered with all the sectors, Federal Ministry of Health, Primary Health Care, Geriatric Association, all social welfare care workers association, all of it over this month. And we have been able to come out with that curriculum, which is accredited. And not only that, we have also identified and standardized for assessment care settings, whether it's be the home, whether it will be respite home or residential facilities, because the market is open. So many people, even, you know, especially Nigerians in the diaspora, they are looking for a way to take their parents, you understand? Yeah. So very shortly now, people will be trained. And the beauty of this is that we have identified and recognized and categorized these skills and competencies and then aligned it to the National Board of Technical Education skills, National Skills Qualification Framework. So for instance, you have somebody who is an ordinary help in the house, but who's been taking care, you know, can go for the training and get some certification. Okay. And then there is progression. So from basic home care, you know, you can now become a care attendant. That's the next level. You can now from there become a geriatric social care assistant 1, geriatric social care assistant 2, until now you get the technical bit of it, which is the NDE. You can go from there. So that's what the center has done. So what this means is that we are bringing social health care quality assurance into these kinds of things. So the training modules will take care of these things you're talking about, okay, where you are trained to understand a care setting. You are trained to understand the psychology. You are trained to understand the dynamics of aging, even family, the challenges. You are trained to even be able to administer medication and so on and so forth, and then gradually until the complex one. So that's what's, and we believe, because like I said earlier, the persons who abuse the most are the caregivers. And then they abuse in different kinds of care settings. And so where you want to, you know, be a caregiver, you must be trained. And this training also includes defending the right of the caregiver, like you mentioned, where the caregiver is abused, because we also understand the caregiver is abused. And so they'll be able to negotiate their hours. So what I'm telling you now is what Nigeria is now going to regulate and certify and constantly evaluate. So we are going to also certify care agencies. Okay. You know, so it's a whole big industry that is opened up here. And we believe that with this kind of intergenerational conversations that we are having now, people will get more understanding and people will become more empathetic, and then knowing that that is your future you are looking at.
Okay, let's look at this now. I saw a particular story that said that some elderly persons are underpaid for what they do.
Yeah. Does
it really happen, and how does it play
out? Of course it happens. You've heard about Omokaro?
Yes, I have.
Who pays their grandmother?
Oh, well, they're happy doing it. It's something they want to do for free.
Like, oh, yes. You assume they want to do for free. Older persons, this is also another kind of ageism. Ageism meaning negative stereotypes, prejudices, and then discrimination against older people. And but we also have developed what we call the Continuing Engagement Bureau, which is a platform where older people, retired older persons, you still have your professionalism, your skills, your competencies, where you can go and write out your profile and all your experiences. And then we have also a portal for, you know, agencies who want to use the skills and the competencies of these older persons, either as experience call, like you have the youth call, or individual placement, or just expert group. So to give them opportunity to continue to engage. But what you're saying is that, yes, there are some people that they look down on what older people. We just finished, not recently, last year we did a national assessment of indigenous crafts. It's older persons led indigenous crafts and towards their empowerment. And the kinds of beautiful crafts, those things that you have there are done by older people. You see those crafts there? They're done by older people. And then beautiful things they are doing. The youths are not interested. But the older persons are in these communities, using the raw materials in these communities and doing such, beautiful things. And they are neglected. So you find that they are not financially included. Where you have small and medium enterprises, it's all youth, which is okay. But in our communities, you have treasures. But it's looked down because they are manned by older people. So that is what my center also is doing. We have brought a spotlight on these things. We have now mainstreamed them into programs with SMIDAN and NDE. They are getting loans now, and we are planning a trade fair for them. So yes, that's what the center is doing. Everywhere that there was discrimination, older persons were excluded, we are now putting the spotlight, engaging them and bringing them back, and then trying to beg you youths to please make it intergenerational.
Okay. So I would like to ask a question as to what your office is doing to perhaps reorientate the minds of Nigerians as to the tag of older person being witches or wizards. Because, for instance, if an older person needs a calabash like that and puts it in the market to sell, I literally wouldn't buy it because of fear.
So after now, you're going to buy it.
Yes.
I'm sure.
Yes.
So what we are doing, we are running campaigns.
Okay.
When we say aging is your future, that's one of our hashtags. Aging is your future. Aging is celebrated. Why do you think you celebrate your birthdays?
Aging.
Because it's an achievement. You are blessed to age. So it's a blessing. And then aging is social, aging is psychological, aging is everything. So the biological aspect of that aging is where you see the skins begin to wrinkle and all that. And what this kind of attitude is doing, that's where you see your young girls driving them to plastic surgery, cosmetics, all that, because of the image. The image, not the soul and the value that older person carries. So you can imagine an older person, like we just had one who was attached to a center, he was a special advisor to the president, and had worked in the UN system for 34 years, and then returned to the country. So you can imagine that kind of man just going to the village and people running from him. Oh, he's old now. Yet he came to our center, and the wisdom, the expertise that we tapped, the joy of sharing the wisdom, that is what we want to return to this country. Because that older person that you see there, their hands are roughed and wrinkled because that hands has seen many years of tough work that sent their children and even their grandchildren to school. You understand? And then the wisdom, the accumulation of wisdom, the expertise, you can't buy it. You cannot buy it. So I think it is to leave the vanity aspect of it and to now attach, real importance and significance and value to the years that they have spent accumulating what they have. So that is why this Continuing Engagement Bureau is where we want to showcase the expertise of our older person in every field. They retired as professors, diplomats, name it, any field, and even the artisans I'm just telling you about. The older women, we have a program, Grandmothers Arise for Good, and that, is focused on older women in the communities who give so much to the community. And when you talk about the young ones, maternal and child and all that, these are the women who are teaching their children, their daughters, how to even birth those babies. So you can imagine the wisdom. And so where our youths stay away, then you have blocked that channel of transfer. So how do I transfer my wisdom to you? How do I mentor you? How do I show you the path I have been where you should avoid? Because that path is going to lead to something you don't want. How can you stand on my shoulder and see far? Because I have gone far if you stay away. So what NSCC is trying to do now, we're doing, is to create intergenerational platforms where we can hold these kinds of conversation. Intergenerational platforms. And then we're also building senior centers. And these active senior centers are places where older people go to congregate, play games, share experiences, write their whatever they want to write, and where we are developing programs that will attract the youth. when you go there, you know, and then interact with an older person, you can teach them computer. And then in turn, you learn from them what you want to learn. So it is called One Community, One Center Initiative. And we are soon going to have a private sector roundtable, because we want philanthropists in their communities to own it and build the centers. We are writing the standard operational procedure, the guidelines. We'll build the capacity, develop the programs, and make sure that the youths are attracted, because there's so much to gain when you have intergenerational synergy. It makes the community coherent.
Okay. Now, I am aware that there are some people. That decide to fake their age or forge their age to be a part of this, because people accuse we women of never telling the truth about our age. You might be 50 and you say you're 30, you're 35, you're 40, you don't want to be old. So have you had situations whereby people come to you and say, okay, I'm this age, just because they want to get something from this particular plan you have?
We are hoping that may soon begin to happen. Because it's not long from now, we are issuing our senior citizens will have their special senior citizens ID card.
Oh, wow.
Which is going to double as a national ID card, because it's disaggregated data from the NIN, from enrollment for the NIN. Okay. We are working very closely with NMC on that. And that card is going to entitle them to so much discounts, concessions, you know, dignified services. That's what we want for our senior citizens. So we are mounting campaigns to all the sectors, the banking sector, transportation sector, medical services sector, to cut an edge for our older people and see all those indicators of age-friendly services that they could adopt. You know, so very soon, when they begin to see our older persons flash their card and get things, I'm sure instead of reducing your age, they will want to. Okay. But as for the women, we still go back to ageism. Where you have this prejudice and negative stereotypes about old age. So you think that, oh, because you are a certain age, you may not find a husband. Because you are a certain age, you are no longer attractive. You said, why? It's because society is putting that out, and you are imbibing it. Whereas there's dignity in just being your person, and there's dignity in you know all that, the value that you carry and all that you have achieved, and just going out there and feeling, you know, confident in yourself.
You know, this thing you spoke about marriage now. In Nigeria, I don't really see it happen between elderly persons, but outside the country, I see videos of stuff like that. And sometimes, forgive me, and what comes to my mind is that, why are you guys getting married? I saw one recently, I think it was this week, where they were coming out at an airport, and the man already planned something, the elderly persons. And I was even feeling like, oh, so this old man, and then I saw him kneeling down to propose. And in my head, I'm like, why are you proposing? Can't you just be there and till whenever God calls you, you get? So I imagine, like, what is the essence, or why are you still getting married or remarrying at maybe at age 65 or at age 70?
Because in your head, is that because this man is old, this man has lost every right to enjoy and be human.
Okay. Because
this man is old, that humanity, that right to be independent, to enjoy, to be alive and be human is gone. So that's what we are fighting. That older person is different from you because he was born much earlier than you.
Okay.
But he's still a human being, right, like you. He still has emotions like you. You understand? Things make him sad. Things make him cry. He needs company. He needs people to love him, and he wants to love. So the fact that he was born much earlier than you does not take his humanness from him. So you must reorient. And first and foremost, when you see an older person, you see a person. That's why we call them older person, not elderly. Because in the UN, globally, you don't use that word again, elderly, because it comes with a lot of negative attributes.
Okay.
But when I say I'm an older person, it means that I'm a person. It's just that I'm older than you. And you too are older than somebody.
Exactly.
The one that is 3 years old is older than the one that is 1 year old. So that now includes everybody in this cycle. You can't escape it. And so when you look at me, I was born much earlier than you, but I have every right and entitlement that you have that is suitable as I define it for my own category of this population. So if the man is in love and wants to marry, and somebody sees him and loves him, why are you upset?
You know, this in particularly affects most of the female gender. For example, in my parts where I'm from, in the village, and things happen, maybe a woman loses her husband and she already has children. Maybe she has gotten up to 50, 55, or 60. And the next thing the family members are advising is, you don't need a husband again. You don't need anything, you don't need any man for any other thing. You already have your children, just move on and train your children. So growing up in that kind of background and orientation, that affects your mindset when you see elderly people doing this, and they start making it look like, if you're not careful, they make it look like you're being, you're not being reasonable, you're not responsible.
Exactly.
Because particularly when my dad was being buried, on the day of the burial, somebody came to my mom, and the person was like, you already have 3 children. You don't need any man for anything. You don't even have a boyfriend or anything. I was pissed. I'm like, that should not be what you're saying. You should not be saying it at this point in time. Though she had no intention of getting married, it should be her choice. But you have no right to tell her what to do at this age, just because you feel like, okay, she's already over 50. So that's the kind of society. Yeah. And it's still happening. Yeah. And that was in 2021, and I said in 2021, if we still have this kind of mindset and orientation, meaning a lot of sensitization still needs to be done.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing. And I'm glad that you have joined, you have been conscripted. You know, we need sensitization. So first and foremost, when you see an older person, see a person. And I want to tell you, there is no typical older person. There is no typical older person. If I ask you now, describe an older person, what would you do? You say, oh, somebody with wrinkles, somebody's hair is falling. No, but you can see, maybe you're describing like an 80-year-old person that way, and then you turn around and see another 80-year-old person.
It's not like that.
And it's not like that. Full of life, vigor, is still dancing, you see, clubbing, you know. So there's no typical older person. But the only thing common to all of them is that they want to be respected. They want to be treated with dignity. They want to continue to be happy. They want to participate in what they have reason to value. And then where they are sick and frail, they want to access quality care. But over the years, society has locked them out because of this attitude.
Okay, I would actually love to ask a question on the consequences of abuse on older persons. I don't know if there's the time so she can answer that.
Just in like
consequences.
The consequence is that you're demeaning humanity, and one, you have harmed the older person. That is direct consequence to the older person. You have humiliated the older person. You have not been godly. Let me put it that way, and knowing that everybody has a right. And is God who made that man has a purpose for the man, and who knows what God wrote concerning that purpose and how many years the person has to live to fulfill. The fact that I am old does not mean my rights stopped when I was 18. I still have that right. So the consequence is that, one, it locks out a whole huge value and all the benefits that society should continue to have, because you have locked up this category of population that have the wisdom, the skills, the competencies. They've gone there and done that and had the experiences. So you have shut them up and locked them out. And I want to tell you what the NSCC is doing. NSCC is unlocking this treasure. It's unlocking it by giving them opportunities to continue to engage, using their skills and expertise and matching it where they want to go. It's also unlocking it by making them to access health care, social care with dignity. It's also unlocking it by giving them age-friendly environment. They go to the banks, very soon they're going to be treated with dignity. Anywhere they go, they'll be treated with dignity. That is what NSCC is doing.
Earlier, you said you're going to give us numbers as to...
Yes, we'll give you the number. I don't have it in my head. I should have got it. So we'll give you the numbers, toll-free lines, where you can call. You can also, popularize it. Anybody who sees or suspects an older person is being abused, man or woman, just call the line.
abused, the man or the woman? Who faces this
We
discrimination?
really don't have, I would just say that off of knowing that societal norms, unfair societal norms have been against the woman.
Okay.
The woman as a girl child, the woman as a woman, and the woman as an older woman. So it becomes the three jeopardies. Especially we talked about widowhood.
Yes.
Most older people, many older women that you see are widows and single head of households, and many older women of that generation, now older ones, were not, they don't have the opportunity of education to say that they were employed in public service and they have access to pensions. So poverty is has more of a woman's face.
Wow.
And so where you have poverty and you have some peculiar health situations that afflict the women more, that's where you have vulnerability. And where there's vulnerability, that's where you likely will see abuse. And the flip side is that the women are also the caregivers.
Yeah,
Those of the women are the caregivers. Even at that age, grandmothers are still giving care. But the men also are facing abuse. So we can't really say. But I want just to conclude that it's a common problem. It's a huge problem. So we should not hide under our culture, our value system. We don't abuse. Abuse is going on right under our noses.
Thank you
so everybody should just be alert.
Thank you so much for that insightful section. You've lectured us in a lot of things and changed our
So much
mindset
to
about.
say.
Exactly. There's a
Thank
lot
you.
we have to say, but time is not our friend this
Thank
evening.
you.
Okay, thank you so much. And that is all we can take on today's episode of Engendered. I think for me, the highlight of this is always remember that an older person is still a person. He or she has feelings, emotions, has a right to whatever they want to do. They have the right to love, like she said. They have a right to make their decisions. What I learned actually is that whenever we are trying to show them care and love, we should also seek their opinion in what we want to do. So it doesn't look like we are taking their rights away from them. Do well to join us next time for an interesting episode of Engendered. I remain Chidinma Ufomadu.
Well, I must say it has been an interesting session, but time will not permit because our MCR person is already telling us to pack our things and go. All right, until next time, I am Victoria Agbi. Bye.
Bye.